Welcome to Just Us, the podcast where we explore the magic of nerdy living. I'm DnDWife, your artistic guide to all things geeky and wonderful.
And I'm Eguile, your seasoned storyteller and passionate gamer. Together we're here to share our adventures and insights into living a fulfilling nerdy life.
Each week we dive into topics like navigating relationships in a nerdy world, maximizing your RPG experiences in small spaces, and growing your own herbs and veggies on a tiny patio.
We'll also share our favorite hobbies, budget-friendly tips for having epic fun, and stories from our homebrew world of Extreas.
Whether you're a fellow nerd, a tabletop enthusiast, or just looking for inspiration to pursue your passions, we've got something for you.
So grab your dice, your favorite snacks, and join us for a journey into the heart of nerdy living.
Tune in to Just Us, where love, creativity, and adventure are always on the agenda. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Just Us. I'm DnDWife here with my co-host and fellow anime lover, Eguile.
How's it going, everyone? Today we're diving into a classic debate that has anime fans kind of everywhere divided. The epic subbed versus dubbed in anime. Which is the best way to watch. We'll be sharing our own personal experiences, breaking down some of the pros and cons of what we do. And of course, we're going to give a little bit of our final kind of opinions and see kind of how we really feel now that we kind of have a lot more access to anime.
Right. So grab your favorite snacks, settle in, and let's jump right into it.
So the reason we wanted to jump into this subject is you and I kind of go back and forth, and I believe we get into a lot of talks with Etlink and Thomas about this, our fellow anime watchers, of the grand old debate of sub versus dub.
Yeah, which one's better?
And right, and so for me, this has always been kind of like a joke back in the day. Obviously, I'm old, so internet wasn't as popular, so there weren't message boards and groups and stuff like that. So it was like those age-old bar conversations of which one's better, the discussion. But nowadays, it's gotten a lot more heated.
Oh, yeah. The divide, obviously, not just with the amount of anime that's out there, but also the different genres that there are have really given way to a sort of like position now where it's like, well, I prefer the Japanese dub over the subtitles over dubbed English and things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of it plays into the idea of kind of more of your background, like how you started in anime kind of led you down a certain path.
That's true.
So, for instance, you're fairly new-ish to the anime world.
Yeah, I didn't watch much anime growing up. It wasn't a thing that happened in my household. This is like a very traditional Hispanic household.
Get that, yeah.
We weren't really watching anime everywhere, but and I didn't really know about it until much when I was more of a teenager, and then I could like figure out what to watch on my own at that point, and that's where I found anime. It was, I think, like watching Inuyasha for the first time at like 11 p.m. at night.
Isekai.
Yeah.
Like
I think it was on Adult Swim or Toonami, one of those. And so I remember I was just so entranced. I was like, what is this? This girl is jumping down a well and then she's like in a different time, but in the same place.
It's not like Hey Arnold or Doug. It's like a totally different
It's not
style.
just kids going about their lives. No, it's she's going to different places, but it's the same place, just different time, and she's battling stuff. And there's all sorts of crazy things going on. So
I mean, I always knew you also had an early fandom to like Yu-Gi-Oh! And like the Fox News or the Fox Kids network of anime.
I grew up watching Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! But I was so into Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Was my jam. I had the cards. I played the game. I had, and then my mom got rid of them all because they were from the devil. But she got past that. We're good now. But a few years ago, I was just randomly looking through a book I had just bought, and what happens to fall out, but my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Card, a Cure Mermaid card that I still carry in my wallet because that thing is lucky.
Yeah, and it's always funny to me because like a lot of those like older anime, especially with people that like that's their start, it's so funny because it's like what they saw and like what the actual anime was are like two different things.
Yeah, it really is. I didn't even realize that. because I'm a kid, right? So
Yeah.
I don't really
I mean, now,
understand the
obviously.
point of like, there's, obviously this came from Japan, so it was in the Japanese. I didn't
Yeah.
even think that there were Japanese voice actors with this. It was just like, oh, it's a show here in America.
I think like Yu-Gi-Oh is such a good one with like the dudes using like radios as guns.
Yeah,
Because
or
it's been-
pointing.
Yeah, it's been edited so that way it's not
It's for
American.
it's for children.
And what was it? It's like the Shadow Realm or whatever. But in like the anime, it's like you die. Like,
Yeah.
there's no Shadow Realm. That's hell.
No,
You're gone.
yeah, you go you
So
go to
it's
the bad place.
It's kind of funny where it's like if you would have watched that maybe with its original connotation, how might that have changed? It's kind of a funny.
It would have definitely been, I think, a little different. The knowledge of that might have been a little different too, with the way everything played out.
And see, like for you, that's always the interesting thing. And when we first met, it was kind of like, hey, have you watched anime? Trying to throw out that little nerd card.
Yeah, right. See what's up.
And it was kind of that where you really hadn't dove deep into much anime. You had a little bits here and there.
Yeah, but I hadn't been able to.
Right. And so, it's always so interesting because, like you said, it was on television and all this kind of stuff. For me, on the other hand, I go back a little further and it's more of, really scrounging with what you could get. I mean, it's going to go back, getting like bootleg VHSs of where people are recording on like HBO late at night.
Yeah.
Because you used to have to wait until midnight for HBO to air like any kind of like anime back in the day in like the early 90s or the late 90s, early 2000s.
Dang.
And so like mine was like very much not a choice.
Yeah.
And since it was coming so quick, it was always subtitled.
Gotcha.
So like I remember one of the first ones where I got really hooked was Full Metal Alchemist, the original.
Oh.
And that one I had to watch entirely in subtitles. I didn't care.
Nope.
I wanted to watch it, and you really had to kind of take what you could.
Yeah.
And then you would get things like fan subs. And so there were
yeah.
anime out there that there was no translation until someone did. But then you would get these funny takes where they would like have to explain certain things because this was back when stuff like we don't know as Americans, so they would be talking about like take your shoes off before going into class, and they put a little note, be like editor's note, Japanese school kids take their shoes off before and so you're trying to read all this that's like kind of also giving like a cultural context,
Right, while also paying attention.
right? And so really you felt like you were part of this like underground nation that was trying to like spread the word of anime to the community, so you were really trying to get it any way you could, because there weren't stores. It really wasn't on television until later when things like Toonami, Adult Swim, and then kind of the different kind of more movie channels where they might play like Armistice or Blue Seed, some of these classics, Spriggan. Like there's some classic anime out there that were like considered so violent they were like, oh well, these are obviously adult.
Yeah, we're
These aren't
never
kid
gonna
shows.
air these.
These have to be on at midnight, so it was, for me it was, I really didn't get to hear dubs until really I started watching Dragon Ball Z on television. I had seen a few episodes on bootleg CDs and had heard the original voice actor. I as much as I love her to death, she's cool and all, but I can't stand the little grandma voice for Goku.
I know.
So once I started hearing American voice actors and started getting kind of that connection, one of the ones I had really early connections to was like Crispin Freeman. He was the original voice of Alucard. In the Hellsing, right?
Gotcha.
I loved him to pieces. Great guy. Met him in a few conventions. He had this little like band that he was starting that was called PLID.
Okay.
They were like a Depeche Mode cover band.
All right.
But it was that cool connection where it was like, holy crap, like here's this guy, I watched this anime, and then here he is.
Now I get to
in the
see
person.
him,
And so
yeah.
that I think really kind of changed my connection with anime because it really was this kind of issue of like, well, I had to get whatever I could get. And so if it was just, going to be in Japanese, it was going to be translation, that was what I had.
Yeah.
But in essence, because I went that way, I think there was a little bit better understanding of like Japanese culture in a way.
A little bit, yeah.
Not like I have to be there. I got to know. I wish I could go there.
Right.
But it's one of those things where at least kind of understanding how
Just a
like
little bit.
the Japanese school system works and all these different things and how they view education and how they view, age and everything,
Yeah.
and so it was like, okay, cool, which those things got kind of edited out in the early English dubs because they were like
Unimportant.
the easiest one is also like the Pokemon, the Jelly Donut.
Oh,
where
yeah.
Brock's holding up a rice bowl and says, I have a delicious jelly donut, because they didn't think that kids would know what a rice bowl was.
Yeah, but
or
we can
it would
clearly
like blow our minds to be like, oh my gosh, a ball of rice.
Eating something other than American food.
Yeah, to the point where kids are going, that's not a jelly donut.
Yeah, we're like, huh?
Right, and so it really just kind of wasn't a thing, right? You didn't really feel like, oh my goodness, you're not a true fan. You didn't watch the original cut of Yu-Gi-Oh!
No, not really, because as soon as I did get access to anime, I don't think I've stopped watching it since. In fact, there are some that I have like jumped the gun on and watched before you've watched because I've been so gung-ho.
I mean, there's kind of that both, like every now and then we'll find ones that just kind of like align to us and that we'll watch before the other, and then it's usually like, okay, well, we're gonna make sure we watch the whole thing, so before we recommend it, we know it's not a dud. That's kind of funny, but you and I always kind of get into this kind of back and forth too, because though I started off on a subtitle, get whatever I could, I am now pretty much diehard dub.
You are firmly in the dub.
I know my voice actors, I know their characters, I know who they play, and now, thanks to you and us and what we've been doing, I'm now meeting these people in person, which is awesome.
So amazing.
And I feel like that's where a lot of my fandom comes from.
Yeah, it really is. You are a big fan of a lot of the American voice actors. I prefer subtitles sometimes.
But I mean, if I would have to look at like the pros, if I'm gonna state my piece, I really think it's just like I said. One of my bigger ones is the fact of you can pay attention. Right, so
true.
Reading I think a lot of reasons why people are put off on anime is they don't like having to read and watch at the same time,
because it's tough putting all your attention on just one thing.
There's many times where I might be cooking or doing something else, and obviously I can't watch a subtitled anime at that same time. So for my multitasking brain, it's always better to have the audio be in English, because then I can listen, and then I can look at the scene, and I go, but I'm not having to like listen for the scene, read what's going on, read it fast enough, and so help you if more than one person's speaking and they don't do a good job of delineating who,
keeping track.
Sometimes they'll change the color or the font, but it's like a lot of times it's negligible.
It's just,
and then two is also like sometimes these subtitles are a joke with how small they are.
Yeah,
if you don't have a large TV
tiny.
or you're not holding like your cell phone to your face, you're not really going to be able to read it.
That is true. They can be blurry too, depending on the size of the screen.
But I feel like obviously this is a big thing because English is my native language. So obviously I'm always going to be looking for something in my native language because I always will think that that's going to be a better connection. So my issue isn't necessarily it should be dubbed in English, but that you should try to watch anime in your native language.
Yeah, it just makes it a little easier.
Right, because and then you have that grand thing when there are these local conventions, because it's already expensive enough to be an anime fan.
Yeah.
So when you have local conventions where your local actors are there, you can see them, that compassion. You can see the fans and stuff. Whereas if you're a subtitle fan, maybe Anime Expo.
Maybe, or
they might be there, or a Comic-Con.
Yeah.
But you're going to have a much harder time meeting with that person, connecting with them, and feeling that you're more a part of something.
Feeling more connected to the actor as well.
I leave the floor to you.
Well, I believe subtitles have quite a few pros. To start, you get a more authentic experience, in my opinion, of the original, because you're hearing the original Japanese voice acting. You'd not only get a more authentic voice experience for like how they're saying it, the inflections, but also the language is different. What they're saying sometimes doesn't translate over just as well in English as it does to the Japanese original, and sometimes the translations are completely wrong.
It kind of gives me like the all our base, our belong to us. Where you're just like, that couldn't have been what they wanted to say.
That can't be what that was. Yeah.
And I think there was a couple of times, even I will admit, you pointed out where you've had to switch it over to the Japanese, to the sub, because you're like, okay, something's not right. I need to hear what it actually said. Yeah, and we find out it's like, they weren't even close. That meant nothing what that was supposed to mean.
I think one of the most recent ones was one where they said senpai in the Japanese, but in the English dubbed, they said it in a more raunchy way.
Yeah.
Which wasn't really the tone that
And
it was being said in.
It made no sense.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that was
doesn't
out of
really
place.
fit,
That was
right?
out of place.
But it's because it's a colloquialism that can have a lot of meaning, so we don't really understand it. And that, I just believe that the dubbing, if you take the time to listen and understand what's being said, or sorry, the subtitles, you can really just immerse yourself in what's actually going on. And also, I'm learning Japanese. I think I've said that a few times. So for me, it's just a lot easier to hear it in the Japanese so that I understand how it's being said conversationally, how people speak to each other in Japanese conversationally is really well to do it. Now, I don't do some of the like crazier animes where everyone's speaking and screaming at each other.
Like the drama, the audio drama kind of style.
But if you watch some of the like slice of life animes, you can really see how they interact on a day-to-day basis in Japanese culture, which is really nice.
You don't need to hear Detroit Smash in Japanese.
I don't think so. I don't think that's
you're going to lose a little bit of the inspiration.
right. So there are like different instances in which the Japanese is a little more helpful too. It's a great way to learn a little bit more about the language as well. You can pick up different words, different phrases too, because I learned that kudasai means like give me versus onegaishimasu, which means please. It's actually please. So like,
Okay, gotcha.
So it's like, oh no, I've just been saying like, give me this. I want this. So, you got to learn that sometimes there's different inflections with different things, and the dub really helps.
Yeah.
Or the sub, sorry.
Yeah, obviously this is something that always goes back and forth, so it's hard to sometimes keep track of.
True. The other thing I wanted to mention is that for sub, because it's in the original Japanese, you get it right away because it's coming out. It's the show.
You can watch it live.
Yeah, it's the show, which I have been. It's one like I just finished watching Failure Frame, which has been airing in its original Japanese consecutively. Yeah. But with the dub, you don't really get that. You have to wait a while for the simulcast to catch up, and sometimes you have to wait for like the whole season to end if you're like you, where you don't want to start and stop watching something.
Yeah, no, that's usually my thing. I'm one of those where it's like I'd rather wait for the whole season to come out and then just binge it than kind of sit there and let it be kind of piecemealed to me.
Right.
I'm scarred. Dragon Ball Z scarred me as a kid, and having to wait 4.5 years for Namek to explode.
Right, that is tough.
I just can't trust it anymore. I can't wait. I have to get it.
I will say, I think anime has evolved to the point where we don't have to wait 100 episodes to see what happens.
Well, some anime, not One Piece. But I know you do have your own personal kind of your cons against the dubs sometimes that you kind of raise.
Yeah, it's not just about the loss of translation, but you lose certain important nuances too sometimes. Yes, that is the correct technical translation of what's going on, but you're not understanding the cultural context of how it's being said and why. So you get the gist, but you really don't quite understand what's going on, especially if you're watching things like where they're interacting specifically with Japanese culture. It can be a little jarring or like misplaced sometimes.
Gotcha.
To not see it match up, and there are phrases, jokes that just don't translate well, so it might be like portrayed as a joke, but nobody's gonna laugh because it just doesn't quite
because it's not
match
a joke
up
here.
Yeah,
right. Like it's just
we don't quite understand the funniness of it. Whereas somebody who's in the know in Japan would be like, "Dude, that's hilarious." Yeah. So it's a little tough, and not all dubs are created equal. I just found out about the Oceania dub for DBZ. You showed me.
Yeah, Go Big Green.
Oh my god, some of them are really bad, so you do have to be careful.
I mean, I'll give you that. Like things like Ghost Stories, where it was done intentionally bad.
Right. There are some that are done on purpose, but there are some that, they're genuinely trying. It's just not quite there. It's like a fan dub or something, and they just love it so much they're trying their best.
I think a lot of that comes down to, as to add to your point, is like a lot of like Japanese voice actors. They're much more celebrated.
Yeah,
they're much more key figures. Though American voice actors, we have a lot of popular people.
We do.
But I feel like it's a much smaller proportion.
Yeah, certainly the fame of voice actors is a lot smaller than A-list actors on the big screen.
Right, but if I were to defend dubs and everything, subtitles aren't always I would say the most preferred. And the biggest push, like I said, was your native language.
Yeah.
And it's so awesome with websites like Crunchyroll that allows for these much big plethora of languages like Brazilian, Portuguese, Spanish, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you get a lot.
Right, you get a lot. And so that way it allows for everyone to experience their own kind of taste. And
that's true.
and much too, I know, obviously, us dubbers, we have to wait more and more and longer. But now, with things like Crunchyroll simul dubs, it's becoming actually
quite easy.
Closer and closer to where, an episode releases and in 5 days, the English version comes out.
Pretty close, yeah.
So it is getting a lot nicer for us, dubbers that like to watch. And if you are someone who kind of wants more of that traditional, episode of the week feel, it's really kind of synonymous.
Yeah.
So for me, subtitles are nice and all, but I think sometimes, especially with some of these really gorgeous anime, when you're unfortunately stuck reading the subtitles,
I getcha.
You're not watching exactly. You might not catch what you would have caught when you get to be immersed into it. And so depending on how you feel about this, now some people might say, what are you talking about? That's not a con.
That's not a problem. Yeah.
I feel like with subtitles, it almost requires you to watch it multiple times.
That's true.
And
I will say I would recommend watching multiple
and you get
times.
this feeling of, okay, when you rewatched it, you might see a scene you didn't quite get because you were behind on the subtitle.
Yeah.
So to me, when you watch a dub, even though I might lose some things and it might be kind of made more adaptable to whatever I know for American comedy, but I'm not going to lose that in the overall because I'm fully paying attention to what's going on. I'm going to be focused on listening, catching all the sights, and my eyes can be completely dedicated. And there are some gorgeous anime that have been coming out that are so fast and high. I mean, look at Solo Leveling.
Oh, I know. The animation's
if you're watching this kind of stuff, it is kind of tough to keep up.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to watch everything and read it, you're never going to be able to keep up.
That's true. Because I will say that is one where I watch it in the dub because you just want to watch. You don't want to sit there and read. So I totally get that. Yeah,
and so for me, I think, looking at like kind of the final thoughts, we go back and forth, but it's really just for fun because I'm the same kind of person. I say, I want dub, but I also keep the subtitles on anyway.
Right,
and I find that it's kind of that hybrid that works real well because I find that, sometimes watching dub, there are nuanced things that you might not be able to hear in time. And so because of that, I do find that having the subtitles, you might catch a sound bite or something that normally wasn't there because you couldn't pick up what was going on, whether it's someone's backhanded comment or it's a sound that kind of gives you more of an emotional weight where it's like, frustrated sigh and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't really quite get that, so now I kind of have an understanding as to what they want me to know.
What the feeling was in that moment.
But for me, like I said, I think the biggest thing, and especially for our community in the early days, we strive so hard for connection. And so with the anime community, we always have that initial connection of the shows themselves, right? You like My Hero Academia? Cool. Then it becomes the next question. Do you like it dubbed or do you like it subbed?
Yep.
But it doesn't change the fact that you like the anime itself.
And that everyone connects on that.
But always I will stand with being able to see, those actors and getting to meet them, shake their hands, hear the voice from the person.
Yeah.
I will put money down that nobody will be able to match that unless you're able to like fly around the world and go to all these different places.
True.
But being able to speak with also my voice actor in my native language also allows me to converse with them.
Yeah.
I might meet a Japanese voice actor, but it's going to be,
hi, bye.
Love you show, sign this, go. There's not going to, because there's obviously a language gap.
Right.
And it's one of those things where I see, personally is like, when we go to SAC Anime, you and I are the ones that are going in the lines. Whereas like Entlink and Thomas, they're for kind of more of the panels because they watch subbed almost exclusively. So when they see these people, they're like, I don't know who those people are.
No.
Like they don't even, when we're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of, look how much more of a connection that you create by, getting to listen to people that live in your country that you might run into at the store or at a convention, and I think that's going to always be better for the community, which is kind of why I love kind of encouraging people to watch the dub. And I will say, and this is my last little bit on this, every now and then there are diamonds in the rough of dubs where I've heard where subtitle people have said, okay, I prefer, don't tell everyone about this, but I prefer the English dub.
Yeah.
I mean, say what you will, but my man Sean Shamel is the hands down best Goku.
I will agree with Eric.
and it's however you want to think, but I will say, like, there are some people that are these voice actors that are just amazing.
Yeah.
Hands down on both sides.
That is true.
But for me, when I can see them more, it just makes me kind of more hyped for my fandom.
Gets you more excited. Yeah, definitely the bigger connection is there.
Any final thoughts for you?
Yeah, well, it's tough to hold up to the whole like visual experience that dub gives you, but I will say there are advantages of subtitle besides what we've discussed. The immediate access to new episodes is really where it's at for me being such an avaricious sort of like consumer of anime. I have a whole watch list I'm going through right now, so it's really good to just be able to get them as they come and not have to worry. And I will say some of the Japanese subtitles are like hilarious, because
there are some.
Watching Spy X Family in the original Japanese I am busting a gut every time. It is so funny.
That's one where you've watched both versions.
I have watched both versions, and they're both amazing in their own way. And honestly, because it's more of a children oriented Japanese anime, I get to learn a little bit more Japanese
that's true, huh?
as I watch it, which is really
learning.
fun. Exactly. As Anya's learning, so am I. And some anime don't really get a dub. We're stuck having to
There's
watch
a few
the
that
Japanese.
I'm like fingers crossed, like come on, make it, because honestly I probably won't ever watch it unless it gets a dub.
Yeah, like I really love Failure Frame and I want you to watch it, but if there is no dub that comes out for it, then you probably never will.
Yeah.
That's a tough one, right? But I hope they do. The only thing I will say is the only snag with dub that you sometimes hit is when voice actors leave or pass away, unfortunately. And then you get people who come in and replace them, and they don't quite match up. So sometimes it can throw off an entire anime because the voice actors have changed.
Yeah, I also contend. I agree, because I think we're talking more of also about like, English voice actor dialect differences is so much further than Japanese vocal
right, 'cause it's
dialects.
a smaller regionality.
And because they have so many people, they can find someone that sounds so close
pretty quickly.
It's like, I think they showed like the ladies who do Pikachu, and they all sound identical.
Yep.
But, like for me, I kind of dropped off for Shield Hero because I didn't quite like the new guy's voice.
Yeah, or it just wasn't the same as the originals, not quite as similar, so it just didn't really match up, and then you're stuck like, oh, but that's not the voice I'm used to.
Yeah, you definitely have a point on that one.
Yeah. So that was my last little jab at dub there.
So, final opinions, recommendations?
At the end of the day, it's not really a right or wrong answer to watch anime in the dub or the sub. It's up to everyone's preference, and I think that's the biggest takeaway here is don't be afraid to let your freak flag fly in any direction, whether it's dub or sub. Be proud of that and embrace it, enjoy it, and we can all come together, even if we don't agree on which is the best way to watch it. We can all come together and bond over the shows that we love, that we share in common, despite the languages in which we watch them.
Right.
I also recommend that listeners try to watch their favorite shows in both of the ways, just because it gives you so much more understanding when you watch it in both, right? You can get the dub and enjoy the animation, and then you can get the sub and enjoy the understanding that brings for the anime, and really get basically what I think is the full picture of what you're trying to enjoy.
Yeah, right. And like I said, there's so many ways to get all the different languages nowadays that it's not that hard to watch it twice.
Oh, yeah. With services like Crunchyroll, it's become so simple to just switch between sub and dub really easily. It's how I was able to watch Spy X Family in both, because it's just so quick. You just switch it really easily and you can keep going.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like more like we are one in a sense that like I would really love to see hopefully one day where these kind of studios all kind of merge into one, not like a monopoly, but like a lot more cooperation so that we can see perhaps simultaneous releases in multiple languages dubbed across, right? And maybe, you know, because my biggest hamper with dub, to kind of shoot myself in the foot, is sometimes you know, you might get the dubbed language, but you're not going to get all the wording dubbed or translated.
The written wording
right?
on
So
the anime.
that you know, to see where we could see more cooperation between the studios and the actors and the production companies, could see a really cool rise in allowing, like, essentially, all right, everyone in the world is standing together watching the episode live too, because it comes out in all the languages. I think it would help really kind of maximize how much that could provide accessibility to everyone at the same time. You know, nothing's worse, you know, than your favorite anime, but because people who watched it sub got to see it 2 weeks before you, they're sharing the details and all that,
and now it's all ruined sort of for you.
So when you have it in your preferred language, and you know, if it's your native language or not, you know, when you can all be a part of the experience together, that's just what brings us together. Like when the internet came, the nerds were able to form their communities and get and you know, unite, and so we always love kind of more ways to bring each other together. But really, you know, the important thing is that you enjoy anime, whether it's subbed or dubbed. It doesn't matter. It's all about, you know, making sure these companies get the respect, get the support, and we continue on. So whether you know, you're fans of the Japanese voice actors or the American voice actors, you know, always make sure to show them some love and respect, whether it's on social media or if you go to a convention. You know, that's always something really, you know, nice that you can do, as well as just increase your fandom. Meeting some of these people is awesome.
It's definitely once in a lifetime experiences.
Well, that's basically all for today's episode. You know, whether you're team sub or dub, we hoped you enjoyed kind of our little take on this debate.
Yeah, remember, there's no wrong way to enjoy anime. Let us know your thoughts. What do you prefer, subtitles or dubs? Join the conversation on our Couple of Nerds Discord and share your anime watching habits with us.
Yeah, and also don't forget to like, review, and also subscribe. We got plenty more of Just Us episodes coming your way, so be sure to stay tuned.
Catch you next time, and until then, happy watching. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Just Us. We hope you enjoyed diving into our nerdy world and picked up some tips for your own adventures.
We'd love to hear about your own nerdy hobbies and see your unique living spaces. Connect with us on a Couple of Nerds Discord. Share your stories, photos, and join the conversation with fellow nerds.
And don't forget to check out our Couple of Nerds YouTube channel. We post videos showcasing the hobbies, crafts, and small living space innovations we cover in each episode.
Whether it's painting miniatures, growing a garden on your balcony, or setting up the perfect RPG space in your apartment, we've got plenty of inspiration and tips to share.
Subscribe, like, and comment on our videos, and stay connected with us through all our adventures.
Until next time, keep embracing your inner nerd and living your best geeky life.
Thanks for listening to Just Us, where we come together in nerdy harmony.